Chapter 1811. Red Lotus came out 5 on the side. Su Luo could see Nangong Luyan at a glance. At this moment he closed his eyes, his eyelashes were as thin as cicada wings, and his thick eyebrows were tightly wrinkled, which seemed to have something difficult to understand. Su Luo's eyes looked down, and her face turned red in an instant, because she found that at this time, Nangong Luyan unexpectedly did not have a strand of thread. The skin was as pure as a baby. It may be assumed that it was because of the burst of lava, the cloth couldn't withstand, and it turned into ashes. Nangong Luoyun's silk clothes couldn't bear it, so in that case, Su Luo subconsciously looked down. Next moment, her complexion became even more red. Her clothes were turned to ashes. There was not much time to think about it. Su Luo quickly took out clean clothes from her space. After taking a good care of herself, Su Luo took out the men's clothes to help Nangong Luyan dress properly. Fortunately, there's always men's clothes in her space, which was convenient at this time. Nangong Luyan still did not wake up. Little Stone, what's going on? Su Luo sat cross-legged, waiting for Nangong Luyan to wake up while throwing questions to Little Stone. She remembered that the lava was soaring like a tidal wave. However, now she was actually still alive. There must be something fishy about it. But Su Luo waited for a long time, but there's still no answer. Little Stone. Su Luo called again in a low voice. Still no response. What's going on? Su Luo suddenly had a bad feeling. Her soul quickly drifted into the space, searching for traces of Little Stone everywhere. There was no trace of him at the side of the spring where Little Stone liked to stay. On the peak of the mountain with the highest view, there was still no trace of him. There was still no trace of him under the variant acacia tree with the densest spirit. Where the hell did Little Stone go? Su Luo's bad premonition grew stronger and stronger. Suddenly, a weak smile and familiar words appeared in her mind. He said, "Little girl, live well." At that time Su Luo was unconscious. She thought it was a dream and didn't take him seriously. But now, Su Luo anxiously looking for that piece of red little stone. But the little stone was gone. It was like disappearing out of thin air. Su Luo was so anxious. She was running around in circles releasing her spirit power, and searching everywhere inside and out in her space for 7 or 8 times. But the little stone seemed to vanish into thin air. There was not one bit of a trace. In the end, what's going on? Su Luo left the space dispirited. The soul returned to the reality. However, the worry about Little Stone grew more and more. Maybe Nangong Luyan knew something. Thinking about this, Su Luo began to push Nangong Luyan. Wake up, quickly wake up. With Su Luo call, the dense curly lashes of Nangong Luyan fluttered slightly, and slowly opened the slightly misty eyes. Cough cough. As soon as he opened his eyes, Nangong Luyan burst into a violent cough. Su Luo suddenly felt distressed. She quickly helped him up, patted him gently on the back, and asked with concern and anxiousness. What's wrong? Did you get hurt again? Is it serious? Very serious. Nangong Luyan took advantage of the situation, leaned on Su Luo's slender shoulder, greedily inhaled her unique fragrance and said weakly, "It's painful, really painful." Su Luo lovingly caressed his white jade-like face, bit her lower lip, and apologized ruefully. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have woke you up." Chapter 1812. Red Lotus came out 6, so you are responsible. Nangong Luyan took her hand, encircled it around his waist, and grunted slowly. After hearing this, Su Luo suddenly did not know whether to laugh or cry. Okay, I'll take responsibility. Is it possible not to be responsible? But first, tell me, where is Little Stone? Nangong Luyan knew the existence of Little Stone, and Su Luo remembered that when she was unconscious, Nangong Luyan was still awake. He must have known what happened. Little Stone. There was a light flashed in Nangong Luoyun's eyes. Seeing him stop talking, Su Luo was anxious. Come on, tell me already, don't cover up the truth. Nangong Luyan looked at Su Luo solemnly, with an unprecedented dignified look. He asked, "Are you sure you want to know the truth?" Amen. Su Luo nodded without hesitation. Even if the truth is cruel? Nangong Luyan confirmed again. Amen. Su Luo noted firmly again. Even in the face of the first fire in the creation of heaven and earth, With her understanding of Little Stone, he would never betrayed himself. On the contrary, what Su Luo was most worried about was that Little Stone had an accident in order to save her. No wonder that Little Stone was willing to sacrifice for you. Nangong Liuyun's slender and jade-like fingers gently rubbed Su Luo's white cheek, sighed softly. The Little Stone had disappeared, and will never appear again. You don't be too sad. Sacrifice for me? You mean Little Stone? Su Luo's eyes turned red instantly, and she stared at Nangong Liuyun in disbelief. Her fingers tightly grasped his clothes, and the veins on the back of her hands was bulging. You didn't mean that, do you? No, it's what you think. Although Nangong Liuyun couldn't bear it, he knows that better to just get the pain over with, rather than prolong the agony, so he quickly told Su Luo the truth of the matter. It's an honor to die for you. Do you really think so? Su Luo stared at him angrily. What was the honor of Little Stone to die for her? How could she make Little Stone have this honor? Well, if I can die for you, it is also my honor. Nangong Liuyun took Su Luo's little head into his arms and recalled the previous details with a sigh in his voice. At that time I was seriously injured. I could protect myself but couldn't protect you. If I protect you, I would die. Su Luo's eyes widened instantly. Exactly how serious was the situation? Yes, it was so serious. Under such circumstances, Nangong Liuyun gently stroked Su Luo's satin-like soft black hair with his fingers and said slowly, word by word. There was no way at the time, just when I made my choice, Little Stone appeared. The fiery red lava was reflected in the Nangong Liuyun's deep and beautiful eyes, with a trace of enchanting and devilish beauty. Nangong Liuyun paused, and then slowly told this life and death matter. Little Stone figure appeared. He turned into an armor of nothingness, protected you and me. But the power of the Yun Luo Red Lotus explosion was too powerful. Even if he exhausted his spirit power, he could only protected us for a few seconds. So, in the end he used the way of burning his soul. Nangong Liuyun said with a sigh. As we all know, the power of burning the soul was very powerful, but once the soul was burned, it would really disappeared from this world and turned into nothingness. Chapter 1813. 1 Year 1 No. Su Luo's tears fell down. Tears rolled down her cheeks, fell onto the lotus petal, and splashing a little water. Little Stone, was he really gone? She didn't believe it. But if that was not the case, where would he go? Su Luo searched inside and out, but there was no trace of him everywhere. Nangong Liuyun cradled her in his arms and gently caressed her soft back, and softly consoled her. Restrain your grief, carry on with your life. I don't believe it. Su Luo was stirred up. She pulled Nangong Liuyun's sleeve. Her lips was trembling slightly with emotion, and she said repeatedly, how can it be? I will soon be promoted to commander rank. That time I can help him rebuild his body. He can appear justly and honorably. Why is this happening? Nangong Liuyun did not know how to comfort her. He just kept patting her back and comforting her. Su Luo's heart was bitter. Little Stone disappeared like this. She didn't even have time to say last words to him. Although he was arrogant and had a poisonous tongue, he had helped her so much along the way, just like her closest comrade, who was also a teacher and a friend. Su Luo was completely immersed in sadness. 2 tears flowed silently and dropped to the lotus petal under her. Tick, tick. Suddenly, Su Luo found that the lotus petals at her feet were shaking. Although slight, she and Nangong Liuyun felt it at the same time. Go and find the Yin Luo Red Lotus. Nangong Liuyun threw this task to her in order to make Su Luo stop her sadness. The Little Stone rescued you regardless of his life, just to let you conquer the Yin Luo Red Lotus. Don't tell me you won't let Little Stone's last wish come true? Okay, I'll look for it. Su Luo wiped away the tears in her eyes. Only then, Su Luo measured up everything in her surrounding. As far as the eye can see, all surrounded by a sea of fire. Countless of fire scattered everywhere. There was a surging lava beneath, with an unbearable heat. In the center of the lava was a red and enchanting lotus. The lotus was very large, and the small petal was the size of a double bed. Su Luo and Nangong Liuyun slept on this petal before. Yun Luo Red Lotus? Su Luo pointed her finger to the huge lotus. At this time, the Yun Luo Red Lotus seemed to fell into a deep sleep, not as powerful as before, like the devil's nature that devour everything. Su Luo wanted to approach it, but found out that she couldn't get into the range of the Lotus core. Su Luo shook her head at Nangong Luyan helplessly. Nangong Luyan beckoned to Su Luo. Now your strength has not been restored. It is inevitable that you are unable to subdue it. Come here. Su Luo silently walked towards Nangong Luyan. Nangong Luyan's snow-white fingers were placed on her veins. His deep eyes were looking at Su Luo for a moment, and his thick eyebrows were slightly wrinkled. Only 20% of your strength remained. In fact, Nangong Luyan himself also had no strength, not even the strength to stand. Under such circumstances, let alone subdue Yin Luo Red Lotus, they had better expect that the Yin Luo Red Lotus would not suddenly burst out and devour them instead. Su Luo and Nangong Luyan seized the time to cultivate. But the situation outside had changed dramatically. Dongfang Xian retreated very quickly, and the moment when he pulled out, a big explosion happened in the place of the Yin Luo Red Lotus. Chapter 1814. 1 year two before the outbreak, because Little Stone fought with his life at the last moment, the half-awakened Yin Luo Red Lotus was severely impacted, to the extent that now it was in a semi-disabled state, fell into a coma, and had no ability to attack. At this time, it was also the best time to subdue it. Unfortunately, Su Luo and Nangong Luyan were both like a clay bodhisattva fording a river, unable to save themselves, let alone others. Time goes by. Su Luo's cultivation was gradually recovering, but Nangong Luyan's situation was not very good. Previously, in order to save Su Luo, he threw himself to block all of the attacks with his body, so the injury was much more serious than what Su Luo saw, and he didn't know how long it would take to recover. But Su Luo looked at Yin Luo Red Lotus, and then looked at the quiet Nangong Luyan's back. The anxiety in her eyes became more and more intense. Su Luo remembered that Master once said that the gate of Roaming Dragon's secret territory was only open for 3 months. Once 3 months were up, if you couldn't go out, you could only be locked in forever. But now, even if Su Luo gave up the Yin Luo Red Lotus, she couldn't get out. Because she had looked around. It was a fiery red world. There were crimson flame in all directions, surrounded by scalding hot lava surging like a tidal wave. Through the lava, there was a snow-white wall. They did not know what material it was made of, but it was not something that she and the injured Nangong Luyan could break. Therefore, now they were like being put in an egg with no door on all sides. Su Luo suddenly felt helpless. How could this be good? Hee. A strange voice came to Su Luo's ear, which almost scared her. Who? Su Luo looked around warily, but there was nothing unusual. Want to go out? This sound seemed to come from a distant space-time, but it also seemed to be close. Su Luo's body turned around in an instant, staring coldly at the Yin Luo Red Lotus, earnestly and cautiously. It was you. Amen. The master of this voice spoke very proudly, just like Little Stone. Su Luo's heart sank suddenly after she realized something. The Yin Luo Red Lotus could talk to her. Does it mean that it has fully awakened? Then how to deal with it? What did you do with Little Stone? Is he still alive? Su Luo's eyes were fixed on the blooming Yin Luo Red Lotus, and with hope in her heart. But what the lotus said made Su Luo's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Little Stone? The ball of fire? It seemed to be at a loss, and it seemed to have a little impression after slowly recalling it. Oh, the taste of that ball of fire was quite good. You. Su Luo's veins on her forehead was bulging. She wished she could tear the Yin Luo Red Lotus into pieces. Hateful. You are hateful. The Yin Luo Red Lotus was not very smart, but it could still understand others' scolding, so it became unhappy, and it proudly snorted. If this young master didn't have the memory of that ball of fire in my mind, I will blow you all into dregs. Humph. Su Luo caught a hint of information from this sentence. She instantly stared with her big eyes, and asked affirmatively, You mean Little Stone lives in your mind? Tell me if it's true. Chapter 1815. 1 year 3. This problem was somewhat abstruse. After just waking up from a deep sleep, Little Red Lotus scratched his head. After struggling for a while, he could barely understood. Anyway, he had become a little memory of this young master. Oh, you are so troublesome. Su Luo, who was accused of being troublesome, didn't know what to do or how to react. In fact, if you didn't stare at this lotus flower, its haughty expression was a little bit like a little stone. Could it be said that after being swallowed by the Yun Luo Red Lotus, the little stone really became a part of Yun Luo Red Lotus's body? That is to say, in fact, little stone still exists? Just when Su Luo was shocked, pleased, and puzzled, the bright lotus petal of little red lotus reached out and touched Su Luo's calf. Hey, do you want to go out? The little lotus's manner of speaking was aloof and insufferably arrogant. Of course, do you have a way? Su Luo snorted unhappily. Originally, she wanted to contract the Yun Luo Red Lotus before it woke up, but now this little thing had woken up on its own and looked so proud. It would be difficult to contract. But little stone became a part of its body. How could Su Luo be reconciled if she did not contract it? One only saw the Yun Luo Red Lotus raise its hand. Suddenly, numerous lotus petals were falling continuously. However, these lotus petals were fixed in the mid-air in a strange and uncanny manner, not falling to the ground as Su Luo expected. Fuse 64 into 32, and you can get out. The Yun Luo Red Lotus snorted coldly. Then, the huge red lotus closed itself up, like a small crouched animal, and seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to Su Luo. Of course, it didn't tell Su Luo what was the biggest surprise after her success. In fact, it didn't really want Su Luo to succeed, but it was restricted to the rules and the inexplicable closeness to Su Luo in its mind. So it still told her the method. But after he was somewhat regretted it, so it closed itself up and curled up in depression. So what the eye didn't see, the heart didn't grieve over. Naturally, Su Luo didn't know the twists and turns in the little brat's mind. So it felt strange to see that it actually shrank back. When she reacted and wanted to ask again, she couldn't wake the little brat up. These lotus petals were arranged like a platoon of soldiers. At first glance, there seemed to be no rule to speak of, but if you think about it carefully, you would find that there was an endless mystery in them. Helpless, Su Luo could only focus on these strange red lotus petals in mid-air. Su Luo turned to look at Nangong Luoyun. At this time, Nangong Luoyun's handsome face was pale and bloodless, his eyes closed tightly, and he fell into a deep meditation. Don't bother him anymore. Su Luo thought so, then sat on the ground with one hand on her chin, frowned and stared at the petals. From 64 lotus petals to 32? What should I do? No clue at all. The little brat was really slipping away without giving a little hint. Su Luo groaned in her heart, and her brain was spinning. After thinking about it for a long time, still fruitless and had no idea. So Su Luo stood up suddenly. She thought angrily since she hadn't thought of a way to fuse them. Would it be possible to add them up one by one? Chapter 18:16. Problem solving. One, she thought so, and naturally would do so. But what happened to Su Luo was unexpected. She did not know what method was used by the little red lotus, but it was still motionless. Su Luo just wanted to jump up, but when she was halfway there, something was wrong, because she found that there seemed to be a magical power around her, which could prohibit her. It was like a spider web that could trap people. In other words, when Su Luo jumped up, as long as she was not careful, her body would be frozen in that space, and she could never get down again. After realizing the truth, Su Luo's heart was suddenly shocked. In midair, Su Luo hurriedly turned around, and then fell to the ground after rotating in midair. After falling to the ground, Su Luo patted her chest with lingering fear. Fortunately, she discovered it early, otherwise she would be frozen. Once frozen, the consequences would be unimaginable. After sighing, Su Luo's distress increased. Because now she couldn't even get on. What could she do to fuse the 62 petals into 32 according to the Yun Luo Red Lotus? It was a task that couldn't be accomplished at all. Su Luo really felt more and more distressed and desperate, and kept sighing. If it couldn't be done, she and Nangong Luoyun would probably stay here forever, never thought about going out. Because Su Luo never doubted the truth of what the Red Lotus said. And more than half of the 3 months had passed, and the rest of the time was less than 1 month. Could she really came up with a solution in this month? If it was after this month, even if they figured out a way, they would never got out. Su Luo grabbed her hair anxiously. then turned to see Nangong Luyan. At this time, Nangong Luyan was still immersed in his cultivation. His face was serious and solemn. Su Luo had no choice but to look at the problems in the midair and studied them carefully. Su Luo had no clue here. Looking back at Dongfang Xian, his luck seemed to be very good. After Dongfang Xian's blood sacrifice, he knew he couldn't get the Yun Luo Red Lotus, so he immediately turned around and ran away. His choice turned out to be right. It was not long after he ran away, suddenly, there was a rumbling sound behind him. When he looked back, behind him was a soaring lava and pillars of fire rose up high in the air like an angry dragon. At that time, Dongfang Xian was surprised, pleased and horrified at the same time. He was surprised that his choice to retreat on the spot was the best choice. He was pleased when Yun Luo Red Lotus burst out. Nangong Luyan and Su Luo were imprisoned by his blood sacrifice. To his horror, he had no idea that the energy of the Yun Luo Red Lotus would be so huge. He was afraid that he would be affected. Dongfang Xian didn't want to think about it much. He used the fastest speed in his life and ran forward frantically. At that time, if he used the speed to pursue and kill Su Luo, Su Luo would have been dead. It could be seen that at the critical moment of life and death, a person's potential would be much greater. Even though Dongfang Xian was weak due to blood sacrifice, his instinct of survival triggered all his potential. His speed was very fast as lightning. The lava attack of the Yun Luo Red Lotus could not be underestimated. So in the end, even if Dongfang Xian ran very fast, he couldn't escape its attack range. Chapter 1817. Problem Solving 2. Listening to the loud noise, Dongfang Xian looked back in horror. What he saw was the surging fiery lava, and the next moment, Dongfang Xian's body was completely drowned in lava. Time had passed for a long time. The lava had already washed away. Dongfang Xian, who was buried underneath, slowly opened his eyes and struggled to support his weak body. "I'm not dead. Haha, God really helped me." Dongfang Xian laughed like a lunatic. Knowing that he was safe, Dongfang Xian's first reaction was to confirm Nangong Luyan and Su Luo's news, although he had already regarded them as dead people subconsciously. After all, the situation at that time, Nangong Luyan and Su Luo were imprisoned without any resistance, and then they were close to the Yun Luo Red Lotus. When all of these conditions were added together, if they could not kill those two people, Dongfang Xian felt that he didn't want to live anymore. Dongfang Xian limped over again. Sure enough, the original flame cave had completely disappeared now. There was only a deep pit on the ground, proving that there was the fires of Yun Luo Red Lotus here. As for Nangong Luyan and Su Luo's body, it must have been blown to pieces by the explosion of Yun Luo Red Lotus. There was absolutely no possibility of survival. All of a sudden, Dongfang Xian felt a huge pressure of fire enveloping him, and his heartbeat suddenly accelerated. Yun Luo Red Lotus. Must be Yun Luo Red Lotus. Yun Luo Red Lotus. After waking up, Dongfang Xian was extremely afraid of the Yun Luo Red Lotus. At this time, how could he dare to grab this fire? What's more, he was in such a poor condition now. Dongfang Xian didn't have much time to think about it before turning around and running away. The Yun Luo did not seem to deliberately making things difficult, and after he ran out of the attack range, it did not pursue. Dongfang Xian reached out to wipe off the cold sweat on his forehead. He was very grateful. At the same time, he began to feel panic. When he first came in, Grandmaster Rong Yin said that he could only stay in it for 3 months. He didn't know how long he was unconscious. He didn't know if the time had passed. Thinking of this possibility, how could Dongfang Xian sit still? At that time, his tattered body began to rush forward again, running all the way to the Great Valley. Great Valley, the end of Roaming Dragon's secret territory. When Dongfang Xian reached the Great Valley, his eyes were slightly squinted, because he saw two people. More accurately, these two people were his enemies, Bei Chening and Xian. Dongfang Xian. Bei Chening sensed his breath, immediately turned his head, and there was joy in his face. Who would it be if it wasn't me? Dongfang Xian arrogantly raised the corner of his lips. Although he was weak now, but it's not necessarily unable to beat these two people, so Dongfang Xian's heart was at ease. Did you see third senior brother? And Su Luo? Ziyan rushed up and asked excitedly. The two of them? Haha, all the information was in Dongfangxian. What do you mean? Bei Qining felt that Dongfangxian's attitude was strange. He immediately pushed him forward. When we were separated, you chased to kill Luo Luo. Speak. What did you do to her? Dongfangxian, tell me the truth. Ziyan's sword had been sheathed. At this time her face was grim, serious and cold. Chapter 1818, Problem Solving 3. Do you really want to know? Dongfangxian sneered carelessly, looking at them with a smile yet not a smile, seemingly did not take their threats to the heart. Say it. Ziyan's long sword pointed to Dongfangxian. Since you want to know so much, why don't you go down with them? Ha 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 ha. Dongfangxian thought of Su Luo and Nangong Luyan who had been killed. He immediately laughed to his heart's content, until tears coming out. It was really great to get revenge. At this time, Bei Qining and Ziyan's complexion were already ashen. Ziyan said nothing, and went straight up with her sword. Dongfangxian took advantage of the situation to dodge and coldly sneered. Time is up. I have no time to play with you. At this time, the Huanjing's gate of the Great Valley in the front was slowly opened. Dongfangxian flashed by, and then flew out. Today was the 3rd month. Dongfangxian had no time or physical strength to spend with them. Looking at the open gate, Ziyan and Bei Qining were both dumbfounded. Then they looked at each other, and didn't know what they should do. Was it to follow Dongfangxian to go out? Or to stay in place and wait for Su Luo and Nangong Luyan? What to do? Ziyan's tone was a little anxious. Bei Qingying's handsome face was cold, his red lips pursed into a white line. Looking at Dongfangxian's disappearing figure, his eyes were murderous. We can't leave until second brother and Luo Luo have come out. Bei Qingying's voice was cold, with a little anxiety and worry in his eyes, and he walked around in the same place. This door was only open for one day. If today was past, but Nangong Luyan and Su Luo had not come yet, then it would be a big problem. Let's start looking. Come back here before dark. Bei Qining stared at Ziyan with firm eyes. Okay. But we must make a mark first so as not to miss each other. Ziyan's face taut, and her heart was very uneasy. After looking at each other, they rushed away in opposite directions. The night began to fall. Seeing that the closing time was approaching, in the darkness, the two figures approached from a distance, and finally met at the gate. Bei Qinin's face was gloomy, with a trace of sorrow. I don't have any news here, do you? Ziyan was anxious. What to do? I found no news at all along the way, and I did not know where they are. Can it really be like Dongfangxian said? Don't talk nonsense. Second brother is much stronger than Dongfangxian. Even Dongfangxian could run out. Could something happen to him? Bei Qinying's face fell. His face looked cold like frost. I don't know what happened to Luo Luo. Ziyan stomped her foot anxiously. Then the two of them looked at the open gate, and did not know what to do for a while. I don't want to lose them, anyway. I won't go out. You get out. Ziyan turned her body and sat on the ground. She stared at the door in a daze. Her eyes were gradually getting wet. Bei Qining sat quietly beside her, holding her head in pain. Her voice was hoarse and gloomy. After a long time he murmured, Do you think I would go out? 4 of them came in together. Could it be there's only 2 of them when they go out? In front, the white light was flickering, and the Huanjing's gate faintly swayed. The gate is closing. Ziyan was anxious and stood up suddenly. Chapter 1819, Problem Solving for Bei Qining was also anxious. Can't let it be shut off. If it's shut off, you could never open it again. They could go out at any time now, but what about Nangong? Luo Luo? What if they're both struggling to get here? No, we can't let the Huanjing's gate be closed like this. Bei Qining and Ziyan rushed up. 2 people, one left and one right, holding on to the slowly closing gate. Both of them didn't know what's going on. When they put their spirit power into their hands and passed it through their palms, the gate actually stopped moving. But when Ziyan tried to let go, the gate moved slowly. Don't let go, don't let go. Ziyan warned Bei Qining with her own experience. Got it. Bei Qining was excited. Look, we really stopped the door. It's really stopped. Yes. Ziyan looked at the safely controlled gate, and her mood suddenly escalated. I wish they could come quickly. Certainly. Even if you don't believe in Nangong's strength, you should also believe in Luo's luck. Bei Qining nodded solemnly. However, Bei Qining and Ziyan didn't expect that the day Su Luo and Nangong Luyan came back was far an indefinite future. The gate was not closing. All relying on Bei Qining and Ziyan to continuously pouring their own spirit power. But this kind of thing is okay in a day, 2 days, 10 days or 20 days, but for many months? Fortunately, before they got a lot of crystal stones because of Su Luo, so they were still able to withstand, but it seemed that they may not be able to withstand it for long. What about Su Luo at this time? She was completely immersed in the problem before her. 64 petals fused into 32? Su Luo was completely helpless at first, but when she incorporated the principle of the space gravity into it, she got an idea. Su Luo simply took out the pen and paper and began to calculate the formula of the space gravity's law one by one. Countless papers are scattered on the ground. Su Luo was haggard and bloodshot, but her eyes were full of energy. Suddenly she yelled, I see. Then she jumped up and cheered. At this moment, Nangong Luyan slowly opened his cold eyes. What's wrong? It was still a faint voice, but very amiable that could make people shed tears. You finally wake up. Su Luo couldn't restrain her excitement, plunged into his arms all of a sudden, hugged him tightly and never let go. Nangong Luoyun's pale lips formed a slight smile, lovingly stroking her silky black hair, with a soft voice. Miss me? Amen. This time Su Luo didn't conceal her love, and nodded solemnly, I miss you. These 3 words, spreading a very comfortable feeling to Nangong Luoyun. His smile deepened. For these 3 words, no matter how serious the injury is, it was worth it. Why did you shout just now? Nangong Luoyun said with hint of curiosity. Oh, by the way, seeing you wake up, I get overexcited, so I forgot such an important thing. Su Luo pushed away Nangong Luoyun, turned and walked toward the motionless air. Although it was uncomfortable to be pushed away, Su Luo let Nangong Luoyun taste the fact that she cared for him. So he reluctantly let her go, and settle the account with her. Chapter 1820. Departure 1. Nangong Luoyun stood up slowly, with graceful posture. He watched Su Luo as she busied herself. What are you doing? He asked leisurely. Combine these 64 petals into 32. Su Luo pursed her lips. But this space is motionless. I can't move them at all. And once people go up, they would be trapped. It's very difficult. Very difficult? Nangong Luoyun's white and slender fingertips slightly raised Su Luo's sharp chin. Su Luo didn't give him a good look. Naturally, it's difficult. As soon as she finished speaking, Su Luo began to turn around. Her clothes were fluttering like a fish in the quiet air. Very beautiful. Su Luo's speed was very fast, only to see her sleeves raised and turned quickly. She picked up one petal and put it on the other. After that, the 2 petals began to fuse at a rate that visible to the naked eye. The stars were flickering, the light was brilliant and vibrant in colors. After a while, the 2 petals were finally fused into one. If you look at it carefully, you couldn't see any flaws or marks. There was a slight smile on the corner of Su Luo's mouth, and the smile even reached her eyes. In fact, she had known for a long time that the difficult problem of Yin Luo Red Lotus was not how to fuse 2 petals, but how to break the motionless and confined space. To put it more simply, as long as you could move freely in the confined space, the problem would be solved. Previously, Su Luo thought about this problem, then she went to study her space gravity. But coincidentally, at that time in Su Luo's nothingness of space, the space gravity, there was 64 golden threads in her mind. So in the whole year, Su Luo finally fused 64 threads in her mind into 32. At the moment when the fusion was completed, Su Luo found that her space gravity has been doubled. Then Su Luo had an idea in mind. She really understood the significance of this difficult problem given to her by the Yin Luo Red Lotus. In order to verify her conjecture, Su Luo quickly went up. In fact, her guess is completely correct. Just when Su Luo went up, Su Luo found that when she enveloped this small area by the enhanced space gravity, then she could be as free as a fish entering the water. All the problems were solved. Nangong Luyan stood at the bottom, watching Su Luo, who was dancing like a butterfly in the air with a light smile on his face. In this year's time, his Luo had finally grown up, and her strength had also increased a lot. If he didn't guess wrong, she only needed an opportunity to be promoted to the commander rank. Nangong Luyan, with his eyes narrowed, suddenly found a fact that frustrated him. That is, when he was around, Su Luo always depended on him, and would not take the initiative to promote herself. Her cultivation was not fast. But when he was not around, when she had to be on her own, her strength would improve rapidly. Does it mean that in order to let her improve her strength, he had to leave heartlessly? This was really a sad story. Nangong Luyan held his forehead with one hand and drew his mouth silently. Chapter 1821. Departure 2. Su Luo had no idea what Nangong Luyan was thinking in his mind. Now she was concentrating on fusing those petals. By the time Su Luo finished this, 3 days had passed. Wiping off the sweat on her forehead, Su Luo fell to the ground. Finally done. Su Luo's eyes were both happy and excited. For a whole year, Su Luo was perplexed by this difficult problem. She was extremely sullen. Now that she has finally finished her task, she was naturally elated. Su Luo raised her chin, looking provocatively at the Yun Luo Red Lotus. Is this not finished? Yun Luo Red Lotus glanced haughtily, seemingly very unwilling to deal with Su Luo. If you don't speak, that's mean you agree. Su Luo looked at it with amusement. Humph, Yun Luo Red Lotus snorted twice, still unwilling to speak, seemed to be awkward. If you still don't say anything, then you tacitly agree. Now that we've completed the task, can you let us out now? Su Luo was not in a good mood. Having been here for a year had been driving her crazy, and she did not want to stay any longer. Su Luo pulled Nangong Luyan and turned to leave. But Nangong Luyan said with a smile, "Slow down. Oh, is there any problem?" Su Luo's eyes were inquisitive. "You haven't got the reward yet. Are you willing to leave like this?" Nangong Luoyun's eyes were gentle and indulging, with white jade fingers poking Su Luo's forehead. Reward. Su Luo's eyes were blank. Why didn't she know what other rewards were waiting for her? "Come with me." Nangong Luyan took Su Luo's hand, turned her around, and walked towards the Yin Luo Red Lotus step by step. His eyes were calm, his smile was shallow, and there was a sense of coldness in his mouth. Finally, 3 steps away from the Yin Luo Red Lotus, he stopped. Su Luo stared at the Yin Luo Red Lotus cautiously. She must remain alert at all times. Now the awakened Yin Luo Red Lotus was at its peak condition. Heaven knows how powerful it was, so she had to guard against it. "What are you looking at?" The Yin Luo Red Lotus was stared at by Nangong Luoyun's deep and incisive eyes, which made it glared resentfully. "What do you think?" Nangong Luoyun asked in a leisurely and relaxed manner. Humph. Yin Luo Red Lotus was too lazy to care about him. "Go by yourself, or should I do it?" Nangong Luoyun's eyes were filled with lazy smiles, but there was a perseverance in the smile. What he meant was obviously asking the Yin Luo Red Lotus. Su Luo was stunned. "You mean it?" In Su Luo's impression, the Yin Luo Red Lotus was a very powerful existence. Would Nangong Luoyun provoke it if he talked like this? As for whether he could take away the Yin Luo Red Lotus, Su Luo had no hope at all. When the Yin Luo Red Lotus was not awake, that was the best time, but she didn't grasp it, so how could she get the Yin Luo Red Lotus now? Thinking of this, Su Luo kept sighing. But Nangong Luoyun's words sounded in Su Luo's ears. Plus he stared quietly at the Yin Luo Red Lotus, smiling with an enchanting smile and evil charm. Go or not? His manner was imposing and oppressive. Chapter 1822. Departure 3. Under the powerful coercion of Nangong Luoyun, the Yin Luo Red Lotus even dropped its head silently. Su Luo was surprised. What's going on? Didn't the little thing seem to be pretty arrogant toward her before? Now that arrogant and bossy appearance, after coming in contact with Nangong Luoyun, it suddenly wilted? Wasn't that amazing? In Su Luo's mind, The Yin Luo Red Lotus was very powerful. It had to be said that the big explosion before left a deep memory in Su Luo's heart that would never be forgotten. Yin Luo Red Lotus weakly raised its head, secretly glanced at Nangong Luyin, shrunk its neck, and then suddenly, it strangely opened the huge red lotus petals. The lotus roots extended in all directions, and the branches and leaves expanded rapidly. When it reached its maximum, suddenly, everything stopped abruptly. It seemed that everything was gone. When Su Luo was at a loss, she suddenly found that she had a soft little thing in her hands, and when she looked down, she was dumbfounded. How could? At this time, a white tender chubby little baby was sucking on the little thumb. The smile was pure, and giggling at her like an angel. A big red belly band on it, with a lifelike red lotus on it. It was pure and enchanting. The little thing in Su Luo's hand were as cute as ginseng dolls. The cheek was pink and tender, which made people want to bite it. Nangong Luyin was a little dumbfounded for a while. But he quickly reacted, and this little thing that appeared abruptly was the entity of Yin Luo Red Lotus. Yin Luo Red Lotus has two types. One was the shape of a red lotus, which belonged to the attack state, and now, the shape of this little baby was its human form after its transformation. Little baby sucked his little finger, rubbed against Su Luo's arms. He also glanced provocatively at Nangong Luyin. Humph, how dare you threaten me? This grandpa will humiliate you. Little Red Lotus ridiculed him in his heart, and making faces at Nangong Luyin. Nangong Luyin immediately became angry, and reached out to pick up the little thing. However, before his hand was near, he was blocked by Su Luo. Su Luo stared at him with disgust. What are you doing? Then she pushed him away. Nangong Luyin froze on the spot, and then he managed to respond in silence. He was pushed away by his beloved woman? Luo Luo, give him to me. Nangong Luyin frowned deeply. It was not something he could tolerate that the stinky boy was rubbing around in Su Luo's arms. Su Luo glanced at him unhappily. You look so fierce you will frighten him. Let me hold it. Nangong Luyin was angry. This showed that his position in the girl's heart was not as good as this rotten little child. Do you know who it is? The veins in Nangong Luyin's forehead was throbbing, but he managed to maintain his demeanor and spoke calmly. Yin Luo Red Lotus. Su Luo glanced at Nangong Luyin like an idiot. You don't think that I'm stupid, do you? Can't even recognize the human form of the Yin Luo Red Lotus? Nangong Luyin was stunned. Taking a deep breath, he calmly said another word. Okay, give it to me now. No. Su Luo refused straightforwardly. Why? Nangong Luyin didn't understand. Chapter 1823. Departure 4. Don't you see that you're looking like a devil trying to beat his butt? Su Luo said angrily. When Su Luo said this, the white and tender baby Red Lotus was also very cooperative. The two little lotus-like hands were holding Su Luo's clothes tightly, and did not let go. The clear, black and white eyes were on the verge of crying, and looked extremely wronged. Good child, little Red Lotus, don't cry. Older sister will not give you to him. Su Luo coaxed little Red Lotus patiently. Nangong Luyin almost had the impulse to stroke his forehead. Do women really have motherhood radiance when they see little babies? What happened to his family Luo Luo? Too, but he couldn't obstruct and shout at Su Luo. You don't understand. This rotten little child was deliberately making me jealous. I couldn't say anything like this. Nangong Luyin took a deep breath, and then continued to take a deep breath. After 3 successive breaths, the anger in his heart was barely suppressed. However, at this time, the rotten little child hiding in Su Luo's arms was not finished provoking him, and made a face at him. Nangong Luyin's body moved with a whoosh. What's wrong? Su Luo turned her head and looked at Nangong Luyin, who raised his hand and suddenly got angry. Do you want to hit me? No, definitely not. Nangong Luyin's heart was suffocated. In order to appease Su Luo, he had to make an apology repeatedly. As he was appeasing Su Luo, he had to accept little Red Lotus's contempt for him. Luo Luo, do you think this rotten little... When Nangong Luyin spoke halfway, Su Luo glanced at him, so he had to change how to address his name. This little baby, we wouldn't raise it, would we? Su Luo looked at him like an idiot. Do you think it's necessary for us to raise it with its strength? Nangong Luyan was stunned again. This was true. Do you need to raise the first fire in the world? Then, what are you going to do with it? Nangong Luyan wished he could hit his head now. He didn't want to take this annoying little child back. You see, just in the beginning he dared to entangle Su Luo, to almost have him quarrel with her. Then what about later? In addition, seeing Su Luo treasured the baby just like her own, she held it in her arms and not letting go, which made Nangong Luyan have a strong sense of crisis. A sense of crisis that his status in Su Luo's heart has declined. Didn't you say brought it back? Su Luo was at a loss, naturally opposing him. Nangong Luyan almost choked in one breath. Well, he was courting disaster before, okay? Do you really want to take it back? In fact, if you don't take it back, let it continue to live here. It may be the best for it, if you take it back by force. Nangong Luyan was thinking of the euphemism. But before his words could go out, he saw the annoying rotten little child with two lotus-like tender hands tightly wrapped around Su Luo's neck. His small body was trembling slightly, and he looked very pitiful, terrified of being left behind. Nangong Luyan's forehead was twitching. This rotten little child's play was quite familiar. Who would really eat this cover? But what made Nangong Luyan feel sad was that his Luo girl really eat this cover. Don't panic, don't panic. Older sister wouldn't leave you here. Let's go out together, okay? Su Luo gently caressed little Red Lotus's little pigtails, softening her voice. Chapter 1824. Departure 5. Nangong Luyan immediately became jealous. His Luo girl had never coaxed him so softly. I know that this little thing is evil. Now it's obviously pretending. Why did you coax him? Nangong Luyan argued resentfully with Su Luo. Su Luo glanced at him displeasedly. What nonsense are you talking about? It looked like a newborn baby in a human form, like a pure white paper that doesn't understand anything. Don't scare him. Nangong Luyan suffocated in his chest, almost overwhelmed. Who couldn't understand anything? Nobody understand better than him, okay? If it was as pure as white paper, then the white paper that day was black. Little Red Lotus was in Su Luo's arms, seeing Nangong Luyan's shriveled appearance, sucking the chubby index finger, and feeling immensely proud of himself. Nangong Luyan really wanted to slap it and take the little thing away. But looking at Su Luo, Nangong Luyan could only put this idea away for a while and wait for the opportunity to act. Su Luo was now preoccupied with this little baby. Fortunately, little Red Lotus was not an ordinary human baby, so raising it was not that complicated. Since little Red Lotus was willing to follow Su Luo, this was the best thing, so Su Luo decided to take it away. In the way, it were fiery red lava in all directions, and the outside was as hard as a shell. How could we go out? When Su Luo didn't know what to do, she saw the little baby in her arms opened his mouth. Hiss. After a slight noise, the red fiery lava around them disappeared completely, and what surprised Su Luo even more was that now, everything became clear at once, and roads opened in all direction. Obviously, they had come out of the shell that they were confined in before. Su Luo looked at the little thing in her arms. Is it really just a little baby? Little Red Lotus laughed at Su Luo, showing pure white, grain-like teeth and two shallow dimples at the corner of his mouth. He looked like the purest angel from heaven. Su Luo immediately put away her doubts and gently caressed the baby's soft hair. Her eyes was full of distress. Let's go. Nangong Luyan glared impatiently at the rotten little child, and pulled Su Luo away quickly. A child was just trouble. A child took so much time and energy from his Luo if it was to born in the future, wouldn't it? When Nangong Luyan thought of this, he immediately made a decision. He would never let Luo girl to give birth. Naturally, Su Luo didn't know what kind of thoughts were hidden under the dignified appearance of Nangong Luyan. At this time, she put down all her mind on the baby. Along the way, Nangong Luyan spoke to Su Luo many times, but he was disrupted by the rotten little child. Nangong Luyan was choked on a bellyful of air. In desperation, he decided to speed up. So a few days of journey became only a day. The entrance is in front of us. Su Luo muttered to Nangong Luyan while looking at the map. But we are 9 months late. The gate is definitely closed. I don't know if there is any way to open it. Su Luo's voice carried a trace of gloom and despair. Master's words were in her mind. Master once said that once the gate was already closed, no matter who it was, there was no way to open it again. It's been 9 months late. How could the door still open? The more she thought about it, the more desperate she was. Chapter 1825. Departure 6. Don't worry, there's always a way. Nangong Liuyun's calm eyes cast a glance at Yun Luo Red Lotus. At worst, let this rotten little child swallow the entire roaming dragon's secret territory. Wouldn't that be enough to go out? Little Red Lotus suddenly shivered at the sight of Nangong Liuyun's smirk, curled up weakly in Su Luo's arms, as if there was no sense of existence, hiding motionlessly. Humph. Seeing this, Nangong Liuyun sneered coldly. The Great Valley was just around the corner. God! The door is still open. Seeing the open door, Su Luo almost jumped up excitedly. She held Nangong Liuyun's hand tightly, almost crushing the bone of his hand. Nangong Liuyun also felt that it was hard to believe. The gate should have been closed 9 months ago. Why does it still open now? Although the gap was only small enough for only 2 people to pass. But, hey, how come there are 2 sculptures? Su Luo's eyes were sharp, and she immediately discovered the difference. 2 sculptures sat at the center of the gate, using their bodies to prevent the gate from closing. At this time, their whole body were stiff, their hair were as white as snow, and their body were skinny, only skin and bones remained. Not only that, the spirit power on their body were obviously depleted, only the pure physical body left. My God! After approaching, Su Luo glanced at them, only to find that they were Bei Qining and Ziyan. At this time, in such a scene, what else did Su Luo not understand? Bei Qining and Ziyan used their lives to help her and Nangong Liuyun to guard the gate. Such kindness was beyond measure. Su Luo made a cry on the spot, then rushed forward like an artillery shell. There was not enough time to see more. Her body was half kneeling, directly touched their pulse, anxiously examining them. Fortunately, although it seems to be stiff, there's still a warm breath in their bodies, which was the result of eating the Emperor-grade blood-clotting pill. Fortunately, she came a step earlier. If she was delayed for another hour, the 2 of them would be dead. Su Luo's heart was extremely complex. Her eyes were full of mist, which condensed into 2 hot tears. She took Bei Qining and Ziyan with both hands and swore solemnly. Don't worry, I will make you recover like before. Please believe me. Even so, it was difficult to repay 1/10 of their kindness. You know, the gate of roaming dragon's secret territory only opened for 1 day, but these 2 idiots have guarded it for 9 months with their own strength. In these 9 months, every day, every hour, even every second, was a great torment for their bodies. However, even though they were in such pain, they survived and made themselves look like this. Clearly, as long as they move forward, they would be able to return to the original world without suffering. The more she thought about it, the more she was moved and the more she felt worse. She left her friends behind and made them suffer so many grievances. Under such circumstances, who could possibly remain unmoved? Although Nangong Liuyun's face remained calm, the expression in his eyes showed concern. Don't worry, they will be okay. Nangong Liuyun sat down behind Bei Qining and Ziyan. His warm palms were placed on them slowly. Then, a steady stream of spirit power flowed to the back of Bei Qining and Ziyan's acupuncture point. Chapter 1826. Departure 7. Nangong Liuyun put the spirit power into their bodies. Later, the faces of Bei Qining and Ziyan began to get better. In fact, before Nangong Liuyun delivered the spirit power, Su Luo had already stuffed them with pills that they could use to replenish the spirit power. With the help of the spirit power and the assistance of pills, this time they pulled 2 people back from the edge of death. But even so, the 2 did not seem to be awake. What's going on? Su Luo was a little confused for a while. The coldness in their bodies is very strong. If they are not expelled as soon as possible, their lives will be in danger. Nangong Liuyun's thick eyebrows frowned tightly, and a trace of worry flashed in his eyes. Because the cold had been accumulating for a long time, even he thought that it was tricky, and he couldn't help two people at the same time. Su Luo was even more anxious. At this moment, the little baby in Su Luo's arms suddenly moved. It suddenly opened his mouth, and two pure red flames shot at Bai Qining and Ziyan's brows respectively. The two flames flashed by, and by the time Su Luo reacted, they were already in their brows. "What are you doing?" Su Luo asked Little Red Lotus anxiously. But Little Red Lotus stuck his tongue out, pretending to be innocent. Su Luo had to let go of it and concentrated on observing Bai Qining and Ziyan. And in her heart, there was a hint of foreboding. The pure flame that Little Red Lotus gave them was definitely not a bad thing for them. It could be said that Su Luo's premonition had always been very accurate. There was no mistake this time. When Su Luo's sight fell on Bai Qining and Ziyan, their bodies seemed to be covered with a faint flame. Their originally cold and pale complexion gradually had a trace of warming. At this point, Nangong Luyan had already stood up. He stood with his hands on his back, his clothes fluttered, and looking at the situation in front of him, there was a complex light flashed in his eyes. "They're going to be fine, aren't they?" Su Luo stared at Nangong Luyan's eyes and asked seriously. Her attitude, serious with a trace of tension and anxiety. "They will be fine." Nangong Liuyun's words were extremely positive, and then he said with a smile, "Not only that, but also the flame given by the rotten little child will be of great benefit to their cultivation. It's called breaking and then standing." Bai Qining and Ziyan's body endurance had reached the limit, and their understanding of the edge of life and death was stronger than ever. In addition, there was a coldness in their body plus with the first fire between heaven and earth, the Yin Luo Red Lotus to temper their cultivation. It would be a wonder if their cultivation did not improve. When Nangong Luyan told Su Luo about this conclusion, Su Luo was full of disbelief. It's very good that they could wake up. As for the others, I don't hope for anything else. Nangong Luyan smiled and shook his head. Don't believe it now. I'm afraid we'll be surprised later. There's something good about this rotten little child. Thinking of this, Nangong Luyan glanced at the rotten little child. But the rotten little child, the Yin Luo Red Lotus, made a face towards the Nangong Luyan, then leaned in Su Luo's embrace, greedily ingesting the pure smell of her body. This rotten little child. Nangong Luyan sighed in anger, and really wanted to throw it away when she didn't know. Time flies. In a flash it was 3 days. During these 3 days and 3 nights, Bai Qining and Ziyan were completely immersed in recovering the body, and they knew nothing about what happened outside. Not long after, Bai Qining slowly opened his cold eyes. Su Luo noticed his unusual appearance early, so when Bai Qining opened his eyes, Su Luo just leaned down and tried to observe his appearance. So, 2 pairs of eyes were in front of each other. Oh my God! Bai Qining was frightened by the enlarged face in front of his eyes. It's not that Su Luo looked scary, but that Bai Qining saw his own reflection from Su Luo's crystal-clear eyes. The beggar with dirty, unkempt and messy hair was really himself? Bai Qining could hardly accept this fact, so the whole person was stupefied. How could Su Luo, with her understanding of Bai Qining, did not know what he was thinking now? So Su Luo kindly patted him on the shoulder. "Young man, what happened? Why don't you go and wash it?" "Luo Luo." Until this moment, Bai Qining was like the soul returning to the shell. Suddenly he came back to his mind. He excitedly pulled Su Luo, and was about to tell her about the sorrow after she left. But, what is this soft thing? When Bai Qining wanted to ask questions, he was startled by the little thing in front of him. Is this your child? You even already have a child." Su Luo choked on the spot, nearly collapsed and stared at Bai Qining. "What nonsense! Isn't it? Don't tell me, you picked up a baby less than a month old from the roaming dragon's secret territory." Bai Qining's head shook like a rattle drum, and didn't believe it at all. In the roaming dragon's secret territory, there was no one but a few of them. Could a child who was not a month old appeared out of thin air? Therefore it was not necessary to explain. This baby was absolutely the child of Su Luo and Nangong Luyan. What else could Su Luo say about this sentence? In fact, it was really just picked up the Yin Luo Red Lotus. Ugh. Thousands of words, all turned into a sigh. Bai Qining frowned and laughed happily. He bumped Nangong Liuyun's shoulder and said, "Hey, I said second brother. You really are grasping this opportunity. This is really wonderful, wonderful." Bei Qining gave a thumbs up to Nangong Liuyun. But Nangong Liuyun's forehead at this time was bulging. How could the rotten little child be the seed of Nangong Liuyun? If his child was so mischievous, he would have been thrown into the mountains to harm the wolves. On the surface, Nangong Liuyun was very calm and collected, without waves and ripples, but his heart was constantly make complaints. At this time, the rotten little child was sticking his tongue out. Nangong Liuyun almost flew over with a fist. Under Su Luo's persuasion, Bei Qining finally ran to wash his body, put on clean clothes, and immediately became the elegant and handsome son of nobility. Dawn. When the first rays of sunlight hit Ziyan, her cultivation came to an end. One only saw her eyes slowly opened. Eyes were so clear as if you could see the bottom, as if there were no trace of color, pure and nearly perfect. "I'm not dead." This was the first thing Ziyan said after she came back to life. "Do you really want to die?" Su Luo knocked her angrily. Didn't she know how anxious she was because of her uncertain life and death? "Of course I don't want to die. I miss you, Luo Luo." Ziyan did not wait for Su Luo to avoid it. She stretched her arms and held her firmly. But soon, Ziyan noticed the little thing in Su Luo's arms. Chapter 1828. Arrogant and Despotic One this is? Ziyan was immediately surprised when she saw the little thing in Su Luo's arms. It was only a year since they were separated. There is a baby in Luo Luo's arms. There was no one else in the roaming dragon's secret territory. Ziyan caught the key of the problem and shouted excitedly, "Is he the child of you too?" Su Luo's mouth drew slightly. Nangong Liuyun said nothing. "You think too much about it. How could this be?" In Ziyan's glistening eyes, Su Luo gave a negative answer. "Then who is he?" Ziyan asked incredulously. "Yun Luo Red Lotus." Su Luo saw Ziyan's face was confused, and then explained. "The first fire at the beginning of heaven and earth's creation, ranking the first in terms of aggression, is the only abnormal fire in heaven and earth." Ziyan was shocked by the two first in a row. Then she turned to look at the baby in Su Luo's arms. In fact, she had a hard time to associate the white and tender baby with such raging fire, but Su Luo had no choice but to believe it. Unbelievable? It was really hard to believe. Su Luo laughed, patted little Red Lotus's head and said with a smile, "If it wasn't for this little thing, we wouldn't be trapped in the flame cave inside and couldn't come out for a year." Then Su Luo told Ziyan about what happened before. Hearing this, Ziyan was speechless and her eyes brightened in surprise. What a thrill, so exciting. Fortunately, everything was more scared than hurt. Now I can see that you are safe and sound. Ziyan caressed her chest and marveled. Fortunately, she and Bei Qining didn't follow them, otherwise they would have died. "What about you?" After Su Luo finished, he asked Ziyan what happened to them. Compared to Su Luo's dangerous experiences, Ziyan and Bei Qining were completely safe. In the Spirit River, Nangong Liuyun fight with a gigantic dragon. In the frenzied battle, the unlucky Luo Haoming was slapped to death by the dragon's paw, and he was completely dead. After Nangong Liuyun killed the gigantic dragon, seeing Su Luo disappeared, he took his anger out on Li Aochen and beat him to death. Then, Nangong Liuyun chased Dongfang Xian. At that time, there were only Bei Qining and Ziyan, who were looking at each other in dismay, and there were two bodies floating in the middle of Spirit River. Bei Qining and Ziyan followed Nangong Liuyun a long way, but Nangong Liuyun's speed was too fast. Soon, they lost trace of Nangong Liuyun. Later, Bei Qining and Ziyan came to the maze. But at this time, the little plum blossom had already followed Nangong Liuyun, and the little sable was also followed Su Luo, so the huge maze had no function anymore, and became an empty place. Bei Qining and Ziyan walked the journey effortlessly, then came all the way to the Great Valley, and then met Dongfang Xian. When talking about the encounter with Dongfang Xian, Bei Qining was so annoyed that he was unable to take it anymore. "If I had known earlier that Dongfang Xian was so abominable, I shouldn't have let him go at that time." Ziyan also filled with indignation. Had it not been for Su Luo's good luck that defied nature, she would have died 10 or 8 times in the hands of Dongfang Xian. Dongfang Xian, haha. Let him live for a few more days. After all, Li Yaoyao's story hasn't been exposed yet. Chapter 1829. Arrogant and Despotic. Yes, at least we should let Dongfang Xian know about that thing with Li Yaoyao. Ziyan thought about it, and her smile grew wider. What thing? Bei Qining asked curiously. It's none of your business. Ziyan shoved him away angrily. But this push surprised Ziyan very much. Oh, my hand. Ziyan looked at her hands in disbelief. Why do I feel my strength getting stronger? Did you only find out just now? Su Luo pursed her lips and smiled. You try the spirit power in your body. Ziyan obediently tried the spirit in her body, and then she was dumbfounded. After a while, she looked at Su Luo and murmured, "What's going on?" She remembered that after soaking in the spirit river, she was promoted to the peak of 9th rank. After that, she was guarding the gate, constantly consuming her own spirit. But just now, not only she found that her spirit was overflowing in her dantian, but also found an amazing thing. She was amazingly promoted to the peak 10th rank. Just one step away to be promoted to the commander rank. What exactly is going on? Seeing Ziyan that way, Bei Qining was shocked, and then examined his own body. And then he was stunned. I am in commander. Bei Qining stared at Su Luo blankly, eyes widened in disbelief. Looking at the 2 lump of silly blockhead, Su Luo was secretly happy in her heart, but her face was still as serious as before and coughed. With the help of Nangong Luyan and Yun Luo Red Lotus, you were promoted to this point. It's rather too little, isn't it? This was clearly a flaunting and shrewd attitude. Ziyan and Bei Qining both stared at Su Luo. Su Luo just smiled. In order to protect this gate, you spend too much spirit power, so you could understand the essence of life and death. Moreover, with the help of Nangong and Little Red Lotus, it's normal for your strength to rise. In other words, Bei Qining and Ziyan were blessed by their misfortune. Originally, they thought that guarding the gate would be exhausting both mentally and physically, also would cause death. But who knows, it's because they were so weak that the effect would be so good after Red Lotus's help, so their rank could be improved again and again. After listening to Su Luo's explanation, Bei Qining and Ziyan looked at each other and didn't know what to say. But their hearts were full of joy. At the same time, they have decided in their hearts that they must follow Su Luo's lead in the future. Looking at the door that was about to close, Su Luo was about to leave, but at this time the voice of the little sable came to her mind. There's still good stuff that you haven't take. What stuff? Su Luo's steps stopped immediately. A medicine that could promote people's rank. The little sable said it in a serious and cautious voice. Could promote people's rank? This was absolutely good news for Su Luo. So this medicine, Su Luo naturally would want it. But it would take another month for the herb to bear fruit. The little sable reminded again. Su Luo thought for a moment, then turned to Bei Qining and Ziyan and said, Go back first, you two. 4 of us didn't go out. Master and the other must be worried. In particular, the 3 months period had already passed, and their 4 lives were still uncertain. It would never be good news for their close friends. What about you? Bei Qining naturally wanted to go back sooner. Chapter 1830. Arrogant and despotic. There was a huge Beichen palace behind him. He did not return for a long time and did not know what happened in his family. But he was not at ease with Su Luo and Nangong Luyan. Don't worry, there are still some things we haven't dealt with. After that, we will go out immediately. Su Luo looked at him with a smile. After you go out, ask for more information about Dongfang Xian. Bei Qining naturally knew that Su Luo was determined to get revenge after getting out. Well, take care of yourself. Bei Qining nodded solemnly. Su Luo and Nangong Luyan were better than both of them in luck and strength. If they stay forcibly, they would not only fail to help them, but would also hinder them. So Bei Qining simply agreed. Looking at the back of Bei Qining and Ziyan leaving, Su Luo's eyes were filled with joy. There are some sincere friends in life. It seems that we are very blessed. Su Luo really didn't expect that Bei Qining and Ziyan would do this for them. Obviously, the road of life was just a short distance away. If they moved a little, they would be able to leave alive. However, the two of them obstinately guarding the door by themselves, even though they know their chances of survival were slim. Nangong Liuyun's sight was distant, and he nodded almost invisibly. Then he led Su Luo away with his slender and snow-white hand, and walked without looking back. They still had important things to do. In fact, if Bai Qining went back in this way, it was very easy to find Dongfang Xian, because Dongfang Xian was not low-key at all. At the beginning, after Dongfang Xian left the roaming dragon's secret territory, he laughed wildly. Stupid Bai Qining, stupid Ziyan, stupid human friendship. At the top of Bai Meng Mountain, Dongfang Xian laughed wildly regardless of the pain in his chest. There were 7 people that entered the roaming dragon's secret territory, but only he, Dongfang Xian, came out. How could Dongfang Xian not excited or arrogant? With this blatant arrogance, he came back to the bustling world. What made Dongfang Xian more and more excited was that Grandmaster Rong Yin had left early. The old men who had gathered because of the game were all left. Such result was naturally beneficial to Dongfang Xian. After he went to roaming dragon's secret territory, he was promoted to the saint rank in one swoop. Exactly like the strength of the ancestor Mo at the beginning. In the small Eastern Ling Empire, couldn't he free to do anything he wanted? Dongfang Xian was arrogant, despotic and overbearing. He didn't return to Purgatory City, but forcefully occupied the Eastern Ling Empire. Yes, it is the 2 words, forcefully occupied. After returning to the Eastern Ling Empire, Dongfang Xian's first move was entering the Imperial Palace. He killed in the Imperial Palace of the Eastern Ling Empire 7 times with his own strength. In front of the imperial family of the Eastern Ling, Dongfang Xian, whose eyes were red and filled with hatred, said only one simple sentence. Nangong Luyun and Su Luo have died in roaming dragon's secret territory. Impossible. The emperor's eyes were red, and found it hard to believe. Dongfang Xian had killed most of the imperial family's member, but left the emperor. Because this person was his enemy, Nangong Liuyun's father. How could he let him die so simply? At this time, the emperor of the Eastern Ling knelt shamefully in front of the Dongfang Xian. He was angry and sad, but he could not help but to endure the humiliation. At this time, Dongfang Xian sat on the dragon chair leisurely, sipping a cup of wine in his hand, surrounded by the beautiful women, kneading his shoulders or massaging his back, serving him comfortably. Should it be Eastern Ling or Eastern Jin? As I remember it, it should be Eastern Ling, but the author used Eastern Jin. So, I used the Eastern Ling for now. Chapter 1831. Arrogant and despotic, he raised his eyes and looked down at the Emperor Jing. He smiled and taunted. Impossible? Haha, to tell you the truth, your son really died that day. I watched him die with my own eyes. Dongfang Xian's voice was gentle and soft, but his smile was sinister and horrible, which made people shivered from the bottom of their hearts. The 3 months period had passed. If Nangong Luyan did not die and managed to get out, how could he have not come yet? Ha ha ha, I already said that he's dead. But you still don't believe it. Dongfang Xian's laughter was arrogant and unbridled. The little fire of hope in Emperor Jing's heart instantly turned to ashes. Nangong Luyan is dead. Who else in the Eastern Ling Empire or in Nangong family could resist Dongfang Xian's insult? Nobody. Now Dongfang Xian's strength had already reached the saint rank. There was no one in Nangong family dare to fight, even the old ancestor. Emperor Jing's heart was extremely desperate. Dongfang Xian leaned on the dragon chair leisurely, and threw an amethyst grape in his mouth. The corner of his mouth rose maliciously, he said. To tell you the truth, the destruction of your Nangong family is only because of a woman. Emperor Jing's heart suddenly leaped. His eyes stared at Dongfang Xian. The name of that woman is Su Luo. Dongfang Xian said. Impossible. The Emperor Jing didn't believe that Nangong family was destroyed because of Su Luo. Humph. Dongfang Xian coldly scoffed. If it wasn't for her, Nangong Luyan would still be my good junior brother. Would I become enemies with him? If it wasn't for her, the Nangong imperial family and the Jade Lakely family would have joined forces. Who would dare to humiliate you? If it wasn't for her, would Nangong Luyan go to the roaming dragon's secret territory? Would you die without closing your eyes? Dongfang Xian was pressing forward step by step, and Emperor Jing was retreating step by step. Your crown prince, your empress, your relatives. It's all because of Su Luo. Ha ha ha. So the death of Nangong Luoyan was all caused by Su Luo. The destruction of Nangong family is all because Su Luo. So if you want to hate, you could hate that loathsome girl. Dongfang Xian stretched out his arm, grabbed Emperor Jing by the neck and strangled him. He looked ruthless and sinister. Now you can go die. Because there was no Nangong Luoyan, Emperor Jing had no value. Seeing the face of Emperor Jing turned from white to red, seeing him kicking hard, Dongfang Xian laughed proudly. Not only you next, Beichen Palace Halls, Green Jade Palace Anya family. I'll kill them one by one. I'll kill all of them. Ha 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 ha. Beichen Palace Halls, Beichen Ying's family. Green Jade Palace, Lan Xian's family. Anya family, Anya Ming's family. They were all Nangong Luoyan's brother, so Dongfang Xian didn't want to let them go. Now he lost reason to the extreme point. Do you want to live? Dongfang Xian stared at Emperor Jing ferociously and laughed incessantly. Emperor Jing's face was purple. Although he struggled constantly, to Dongfang Xian, his struggle was just like an ant trying to shake a big tree, which was completely useless. Ah! Emperor Jing's voice was hoarse. If you want to live, you can. Dongfang Xian pointed to the kneeling people on the ground. Kneel like them, like dogs, submit to my command, ha ha ha. In the main hall, there were several people kneeling. Among them was Su Zian, Su Luo's former father. Su Zian, come here. Dongfang Xian smiled and glanced at Su Zian. Chapter 1832. Arrogant and despotic. Once, Su Zian was a powerful general of the state above 10,000 people, insufferably arrogant. At this moment he was like a dog, barking loudly. Dongfang Xian laughed happily. On one side was Nangong Luoyan's family, and on the other side was Su Luo's family, but now they were like dogs, letting him trample all over them. Nangong Luoyan will not die. He will come back to avenge his father. There were anger, annoyance, humiliation and unwillingness in the eyes of Emperor Jing. But in the end his neck was crooked and he died after taking his one last breath. In order not to live like Su Zian, Emperor Jing committed suicide by biting his tongue. Dongfang Xian looked at the Emperor Jing with his eyes wide open, stunned, but then just like throwing garbage, he dropped the emperor under his feet. It was a great humiliation for the whole Nangong imperial family that the dignified emperor died, and just casually thrown like that. Su Zian looked at Emperor Jing, who died in despair, and his heart flashed with horror, but then he was excited again. Revenge. Looking at Dongfang Xian's attitude, Su Luo and Nangong Luoyan are really dead. Nothing much if it's just Nangong Luoyan, but Su Luo. Su Zian's eyes flashed a ferocious sneer. The loathsome girl who turned the family upside down without end for so many days. Isn't she still dead now? Come here, the Nangong family, kill them all. Dongfang Xian ordered. Suddenly 4 figures came out behind him. These 4 figures were the subordinates of Dongfang Xian, with the strength of 10th rank. For people rushed in 4 directions like wolves and tigers. The fire in their hands radiated all over. The whole palace was destroyed in an instant. A lot of people did not dare to speak or to be angry. Once the imperial palace was burned down, then the reign of the Nangong imperial family would really come to an end. Just at this critical moment, 2 figures came. Stop. A loud voice came from afar. When the sound stopped, the 2 figures had shot to the palace like arrows. Bei Qining looked at Emperor Jing lying on the ground with his eyes wide open. He didn't care about his identity as an emperor, but he had to pay attention to his identity as Nangong Luoyan's father. Bei Qining was anxious and rushed forward in 3 steps. He put his finger on Emperor Jing's nose. No breath. He's dead. Bei Qining was startled on the spot, then slowly got up and turned around, stared at Dongfang Xian with a death stare. Dongfang Xian saw Bei Qining with a hint of surprise. However, when he thought that Bei Qining and Zi Yan were guarding the gate at that time, he was relieved, and then mocked and ridiculed him. I thought you would die for your so-called brother. But at this point of your life, aren't you still looking out for yourself? Dongfang Xian watched the Yin Luo Red Lotus explode. So he subconsciously thought that Nangong Luyin and Su Luo were dead without any dregs. Who told you that Nangong Luyin died? Step by step, Bei Qining slowly went up. Finally, he stood in front of Dongfang Xian, stared at him coldly and looked at him as if he was an idiot. You have committed a crime of death, but you don't know it. Really stupid. Stupid? Dongfang Xian, who was labeled as a stupid person, became unhappy at once. He suddenly laughed wildly, as if he heard the funniest joke in the world. Stupid? Are you talking about my stupidity? Dongfang Xian stopped laughing and approached Bei Qining. His eyes were fierce and violent like vicious wolves. Good, very good. Very good. Chapter 1833. Arrogant and despotic Bei Qining stared at him in disgust. But Dongfang Xian sneered. Do you want to die by yourself, or should I do it? Bei Qining was stunned. Ziyan frowned and glared at Dongfang Xian angrily. What are you proud of? Do you really think that no one in this world could stop you? Oh, junior sister, you came out too? Dongfang Xian looked at Ziyan and ridiculed her. Now I'll give you two choices. Dongfang Xian didn't answer Ziyan's question, but gave Ziyan two choices. Now he seemed to be standing high on a cloud, making clouds with one turn of the hand, and rain with another. Ziyan smiled without anger. Two choices? What choices? She would like to see what options Dongfang Xian could give. First, the same one as Bei Qining, death. Oh. Ziyan smiled and didn't answer. Second. Dongfang Xian smiled lightly and pointed at Ziyan with his index finger. As long as you apologize to senior brother, just one sentence. For the sake of master, senior brother will let you live. Ziyan's put her arms across her chest and sneered. So, do you think that this whole world is yours only? Dongfang Xian was unhappy with Ziyan's attitude. Because normally, she should be afraid for herself. Even if she was not afraid, she should revered him. But she didn't, and she still had that damned proud smile on her face. What was she proud of? What were you laughing at? Dongfang Xian's heart burst into anger. He raised his hands, looked at the sky, and arrogantly sneered. Who could stop me in this world? This time, the most powerful one was his master, the master of Purgatory City. But his master, could it be that he would still deal with him? Grandmaster Rong Yun, as an elder. Would he interfere in the younger generation's affairs? The rest, even if those old guys personally do it by themselves, what could they do? Therefore, Dongfang Xian was very arrogant. Have you forgotten third senior brother? Ziyan's arms were across her chest, and her face was full of sarcastic and enigmatic smile. He's dead. Dongfang Xian was incomparably confident. No, he isn't dead. Ziyan's white index finger shook in front of Dongfang Xian's eyes. Her voice was soft and firm. Her face was still smiling gently. Dongfang Xian immediately stunned. Not dead. Nangong Luyin is not dead? How could that be? He watched Nangong Luyin killed by the explosion with his own eyes. Ha 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 ha. Dongfang Xian seemed to hear a wild laughter, holding his waist, as if he couldn't stand up straight. After a long time, he panted and pointed to Ziyan. You idiot. Idiot, he saw Nangong Luyin die with his own eyes. Could it be false? The biggest idiot in the world is you, Dongfang Xian. Ziyan sneered coldly. Anyway, third senior brother is coming back soon. Then, let's see how you will die. Unexpectedly, he dared to kill Emperor Jing, really bold. Seeing Ziyan said the words with full of confidence, Dongfang Xian could not help but felt a little bewildered. Could it be that he really is not dead? It's impossible. Even if he didn't die, so what? Am I, Dongfang Xian, still afraid of him? Dongfang Xian sneered. He isn't dead? Very well then, let him come and quickly save you. When his voice fell, could only see that Dongfang Xian's fingers unknowingly stretched out. Ziyan's body slowly fell to the ground. Ziyan. Bei Qinying's complexion was pale and cried out in fear. But at this time Dongfang Xian smiled maliciously and pointed his finger to the Bei Qinying. Chapter 1834. Arrogant and despotic. Although Bei Qinying had already passed the 10th rank, how could he escape from Dongfang Xian, who was already at the saint rank? Bei Qinying's body fell slowly to the ground. There was a contempt in Dong Fengxian's eyes. Nangong Luyan is not dead? That was absolutely impossible. Dong Fengxian looked at Ziyan and Bai Chening, and the contempt in his eyes grew more and more intense. He remembered that Nangong Luyan had a few good brothers, for example, the Green Jade Palace Lan Xian's family, Anya family, Anya Ming's family. So why not catch them all? Thinking of this, Dong Fengxian was full of pride. Something called exaltation grew in his heart. He had a kind of power in his hands, which they could not resist. The happiest thing was, when he looked back. There a slender but big-bellied figure stood upright. His Yao Yao. Why are you here? Dong Fengxian quickly stepped up and lovingly supporting Li Yaoyao's swaying body. Li Yaoyao held her waist and leaned to Dong Fengxian. Almost all her strength lied on Dong Fengxian's chest. Her gaze swept across the ground. In fact, she came early in the morning, and she saw all the scenes here. She watched Emperor Jing killed himself, and watched Ziyan and Bai Chening fell to the ground unconscious. After everything was over, she came out from behind the screen with an innocent and confused expression on her face. Senior brother, what are you going to do with Ziyan? Li Yaoyao raised her clear black and white eyes, with a beautiful and pitiful face. Silly girl, do you still want to plead for her? Do you remember how she joined up with Su Luo to treat you? You don't have to worry about these things. Just give birth to our child. Dong Fengxian gently stroked Li Yaoyao's huge belly. Here was his, Dong Fengxian's descendant. Soon they would be able to meet each other. Thinking of this, for the first time, a touch of sincere tenderness emerged from Dong Fengxian's face. The moment when Li Yaoyao lowered her head, she just happened to see Dong Fengxian's tenderness. This moment, Li Yaoyao's heart trembled suddenly. A feeling called fear gripped her chest so hard that she could hardly breathe. Because of Ziyan. Li Yaoyao looked at Ziyan and the anger in her eyes bursts out. Because Ziyan's existence reminded her of that humiliating night. Although she wasn't sure whether Ziyan knew that she was humiliated by a beggar, or whether she knew that she was not pregnant with Dong Fengxian's child, she would rather kill by mistake than let it go. So Ziyan must die. Li Yaoyao grasped Dong Fengxian's hand tightly. Her fingers was slightly trembled. What's the matter? Is it uncomfortable? Dong Fengxian asked nervously and with concern. Now in this world, only Li Yaoyao and her baby could affect him. Li Yaoyao's mind was running fast. She tried to come up with a good reason to dispose Ziyan, but didn't know if Ziyan was lucky. Li Yaoyao hadn't come up with a reason yet. But there was a wave of severe pain in her abdomen. Li Yaoyao held her huge abdomen, took a breath of cold air, and the pain almost made her pass out. Chapter 1835. Arrogant and despotic. Dong Fengxian's eyes were glued tightly to Li Yaoyao. Seeing her pale face, he princess carried her in his arms and walked out quickly. You are going to give birth? Ziyan. Li Yaoyao's face was pale because of the pain, but she still thought about how to deal with Ziyan. Because only in this way that the secret of this baby could be kept forever. The Jade Lakely family could not afford to start provoking the current Dong Fengxian. However, Li Yaoyao felt a little uneasy in her heart. Previously, when she sorted out her emotions and sent people to search for the beggar all over the city, attempting to kill the beggar, she found that the beggar could no longer be found. The beggar disappeared out of thin air. This left Li Yaoyao's heart hanging at all times, and she was always worried that the beggar would suddenly pop up. So when she saw Ziyan now, she immediately had the idea of killing her to prevent her from divulging the secret. Now Dong Fengxian was in the saint rank. Not only does she had to look up to him, but her father also had to. Even her grandfather dare not say a word to Dong Fengxian. In the face of absolute strength, all worldly superiority and inferiority were paper tigers. Li Yaoyao wanted to say something more, but Dong Fengxian reached out and pressed her acupuncture point. Then he said, "Take a good rest, then you can have enough energy to give birth to the baby." The baby could have been born long ago, but even after almost a year since she conceived, Li Yaoyao still refused to give birth, so Dong Fengxian couldn't help but worrying about it. As a result, poor Li Yaoyao could only temporarily lose consciousness. Soon, the whole Jade Lakely's family was in the courtyard of the imperial capital, which was in the state of turmoil and chaos. Not long ago, a wrinkled and extremely ugly little baby was picked up by the midwife and sent to Dongfang Xian. So ugly. Dongfang Xian frowned and commented. The midwife's heart suddenly trembled. Such a beautiful mother, and such a handsome husband, the baby looked really ugly. But how could the midwife say this? She didn't want to die yet, so she could only smile and say, the newborn baby is just like this, and it will be white and clean again in a few months. Is that so? Dongfang Xian held the little thing in his arms and frowned more and more tightly. He looked up and down, but found that none of the little baby was like himself. He couldn't help but look more and more disappointed. Finally, he gave the little baby to Li Yaoyao. Li Yaoyao's cultivation had been crippled, and was no different from ordinary people, so just after giving birth, she was weak and could faint at any time. Ziyan. For a long time Li Yaoyao finally thought of an excuse. But Dongfang Xian's eyebrows were tightly wrinkled. He thought that the kind-hearted Jade Lake Fairy wanted to plead for Ziyan, so he waved his hand and said in a cold voice, don't plead for that loathsome girl. I'll have my own explanation to master. Just take care of your body. Then he looked at the wrinkled little thing again, and suddenly his mood became worse. He left a faint sentence. I have important matters to attend to, so you have to take more care at home. Then Dongfang Xian left. This was no excuse. Anya family, Green Jade Palace, Beichen Palace halls. He wouldn't let anyone off. Looking at Dongfang Xian's figure leaving, Li Yaoyao was so angry that she gritted her teeth secretly. Just where was she pleading for Ziyan? How could she plead for Ziyan? However, Dongfang Xian never let her interfere in his affairs. She didn't even know where Ziyan was being held. Chapter 1836. Arrogant and despotic Li Yaoyao had no choice but to be angry. Because now she was a useless person and couldn't get involved in the situation at all. Time went by. During that time, Dongfang Xian came back every once in a while. Every time he came back, he didn't come back empty-handed. In the dungeon, Beichening had long been awake. Watching his brothers gathered together, Beichening really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Old third, old fourth, why are you two got caught? Beichening leaned on the iron bar and took a straw into his mouth, joking. Aren't you got caught too? Lan Xian smiled at the Beichening. Young people do not know how to feel worried. Even if they were detained, there was not much anxiety in their hearts. The night was calmer. He frowned, looking at Beichening. When will second brother come back? Dongfang Xian said that the second brother is dead, and at first Anya Ming was skeptical. But now, seeing the careless appearance of Beichening, his heart was completely set down. Second brother ought to return when it's time to return. Beichening said with a smile. In fact, he didn't know when they would come back, but it was certain that Dongfang Xian's good days would not be long. There was a joy in the dungeon. Not far away, Dongfang Xian's brow frowned slightly. Would Nangong Luyan really return? The earth-shattering explosion that emerged in Dongfang Xian's mind made him rejected this idea again. Impossible, what he saw with his own eyes. Could there be false? That power, not to mention Nangong Luyan. Even Grandmaster Rongyan may not be able to protect his life? But why was Beichening so determined? Dongfang Xian was tangled. Li Yaoyao stood quietly behind Dongfang Xian. Senior brother. Li Yaoyao's face looked cold. These people, are they still useful to keep? Looking at the ghost like Li Yaoyao, Dongfang Xian's brows were slightly knitted. It's useless. Dongfang Xian suddenly had a feeling of being invincible in this world. No opponent was the loneliest. If Nangong Luyan's still alive, it was not so bad. At least he had an opponent. A bunch of useless waste. Dongfang Xian said. The Anya family, Beichen Palace halls and Green Jade Palace would all be killed by him. No one could do anything about it. To catch these people alive was nothing but to insult. Then kill them, will you? Li Yaoyao's pitiful eyes stared at Dongfang Xian. Dongfang Xian's heart was not moved. Why? Dongfang Xian asked curiously. Li Yaoyao had already made up an excuse. First senior brother, the others are all right, but Ziyan, she is so young but her strength is already at the peak of 10th rank, so awfully talented, isn't she? Has first senior brother reached 10th rank at Ziyan's age? That sentence, was like the last straw on the camel's back, instantly occupied the winning end of the balance. Dongfangxian, at Ziyan's age, really couldn't reach her current strength. Dongfangxian's eyes quickly flashed a hint of envy. Li Yaoyao could see clearly, and she felt proud. She knew Dongfangxian and what he hated most. He hated people that were more talented than him. Well, since Yao Yao don't want them to live, then kill them all. Ha 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 ha. Dongfangxian hugged Li Yao Yao's slender waist, pointed to the prison, and ordered in a cold voice. Give them a meal tonight, and then kill them all on tomorrow afternoon. Chapter 1837. Arrogant and despotic Dongfangxian intentionally spoke loudly for them to hear, because he wanted to make them crumble, frightened, and felt dread. Knowing their own death, they couldn't do anything but wait for the time to come. Such fear was enough to break even the top expert. Dongfangxian, on the other hand, enjoyed watching others crumbled. As soon as Dongfangxian's words came out, the sound in the dungeon suddenly stopped. Dongfangxian was very satisfied with the effect he created. Then he hugged Li Yaoyao's slim waist, and went away while wildly laughing. In the dungeon, the brothers looked at each other in dismay. It's a big problem now, Yeming frowned. He could feel that Dongfangxian was really serious this time. Beichening drew his own mouth. I blame my damned mouth for provoking Dongfangxian. Now the brothers were not Dongfangxian's opponents. Only Nangong Luyan could defeat him. Although everyone knew that Nangong Luyan is not dead, he and Su Luo temporarily stayed in Roaming Dragon's secret territory, and heaven knows when they would come back. When they returned, the brothers would have been cut into pieces by Dongfangxian and dried in the sun. What to do? Lan Xian's face was slightly pale. It seemed that we could do nothing but wait for death. Ziyan's voice came lazily from the corner. Li Yaoyao hated her to death. She poisoned all her food. Fortunately, she had some dried food hidden in her body, otherwise her life would have been long gone. For a while, the dungeon was quiet. That night the food was amazing. The brothers were carelessly cleaning up the sumptuous last meal. Time passed quickly, and the morning light of the next day slowly rose. However, Nangong Luyan still hadn't come. Before noon, Dongfangxian sat comfortably on the broad chair, squinting his eyes, watching the young people standing in front of him. Beichening, Yeming, Lan Xian, Ziyan. Dongfangxian pointed one by one, with a sneer on the corner of his mouth. Now you have two choices. Ziyan's sarcastic eyes fell on Dongfangxian's face. But Dongfangxian didn't seem to see it. He sneered and said, one death, two live. How is death and how is life? Yeming's face was calm, and with the tone unchanged. Death is very simple. You don't have to do anything. Just wait for death. As for living, Dongfangxian's lips was smiling. It's also very simple. As long as the last person of the four of you is left, that last person standing could be alive, Dongfangxian promised. Dongfangxian finally patted himself on the chest and made a promise. What a vicious Dongfangxian. Beichening hated him in his heart. This was gaining victory with unstained sword. Let them have internal strife. Only Dongfangxian could think of such a vicious method. How is it? Want to live or not? If you want to live, then let's start. Dongfangxian was very pleased for coming up with this wonderful method. He just liked to watch them fight each other. That is to say, Nangong Liuyun's so-called brothers would fight each other like dogs in order to survive. It would bring him countless pleasures. At Dongfangxian's commanded, a cold sword was distributed to the four of them. Beichening took over the cold sword first. Yeming hesitated, and then followed him. Chapter 1838. Arrogant and despotic Lan Xian was almost angry, but under the gaze of Beichening and Yeming, he also angrily picked up. Finally, a cold sword was brought to Ziyan. Ziyan looked at the cold sword, and she raised it toward her throat. Well, now the weapons are already in your hands, now you can decide the outcome, ha ha ha. The more Dongfangxian thought about it, the more excited he became, the more he wanted to applaud for his brilliant idea. This moment was the happiest moment for him after leaving the Roaming Dragon's secret territory. Even when Li Yaoyao gave birth to a son for him, had not make him this happy. Time goes by. Bei Qining held the cold sword in his hands, and the sweat on his forehead rolled down slowly. It was almost noon and Nangong Luyan still had not come. If you still don't fight in a stick of an incense time, you'll all be killed. Dongfang Xian's patience was limited. It was impossible for him to let them delay time indefinitely. What are you waiting for? Don't tell me you're waiting for Nangong Luyan. Why don't you believe it? I really watched him die with my own eyes. The blood was like a fountain. It sprayed all over the place. It was gorgeous. Dongfang Xian described it with joy. Hey, don't you want to kill me for revenge? But in this case, none of the four of you could survive. Young people, don't be so impulsive in doing things. Dongfang Xian said with a smile. At this time, he was the king. He laughed if he wanted to laugh, scold if he wanted to scold, and if he wanted them to die, then they could only die. This was the world that respects strength. Kill Dongfang Xian? Bei Qining slowly shook his head and denied the idea. Although what he wanted to do most was to kill Dongfang Xian, it was clear that this was impossible, because he was the strongest among the four of them. But he only just entered the commander rank. Ziyan was at the peak 10th rank. Anya Ming and Lan Xian was only at 9th rank. The difference in strength was too much. So, now the only way was, let one of them live. At this moment, Bei Qining, Anya Ming, and Lan Xian slowly nodded in secret. Then they held the cold sword and suddenly they stabbed at their own chests. Second brother, take revenge for us. The three voices were sonorous, powerful, and unyielding. Don't! Ziyan exclaimed. Tears were rolling down. Although she guessed their thoughts, now that it was confirmed, Ziyan was still shocked until she almost fainted. The three of them actually chose to commit suicide and gave her the hope of living. However, Ziyan's exclamation was too late. 3 sharp swords stabbed into their hearts. The 3 figures slowly fell backwards. Ziyan only had time to hold Bei Qining. No, 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 Ziyan's tears rolled down, and she almost breaking down. How could they do this? How could they left the last hope of living to her so cruelly, when she was not ready? How could she live alone in the future? Good girl, don't cry. The blood slowly flowed from the corner of Bei Qining's mouth, but he had a bright smile on his face, just like a young man who smiled when the sun faded. How can it be like this? How can it be? Ziyan only repeated this sentence over and over again. Silly girl, live a good life for our brothers. Live. And, I'm sorry. Although Bei Qining was smiling, but his forehead was dripping with cold sweat. Chapter 1839. Arrogant and despotic, the heart was pierced by a sharp sword, but he could still persevered, and hadn't take his last breath. Only a strong man like him could do it. How could Ziyan not understand Bei Qinying's words? He wanted her to live, no matter how hard, no matter how humiliating, to wait for Nangong Liuyun's return, which would be the day of Dongfang Xian's death. If she died, she would die, but if she lived, she would suffer the humiliation from Dongfang Xian and Li Yaoyao. So he said sorry to her. And, Bei Qinying's chest heaved violently. He knew that if he didn't say something, he would never have a chance in this life. And, I love you. Suddenly, Bei Qining gathered all his spirit power, and told her these 3 words. These words lingered in his heart for a long time. He had always known that Ziyan liked him, but he pretended not to know because of Luo Luo. But in fact, he had long willing to give up on the hopeless love, and unknowingly left his heart to Ziyan. I love you too, I love you too. Don't leave me. Beichen, since you love me, then don't leave me. Ziyan cried like a helpless child. She kept shaking Bei Qining, trying to wake him up, but no matter how she shook him, Bei Qining still closed his eyes tightly. She held his hand, but couldn't feel his pulse. No, no, it's not true, it's not true. At this moment, Ziyan's mind was crumbling, completely blank. In fact, this result also shocked Dongfang Xian. Dongfang Xian sat in his chair, shocked by the scene in front of him. He asked them to fight internally for the only chance of survival. He wanted to prove that in the face of death, the so-called brothers' loyalty was worthless, and whoever talked about loyalty was a fool. But the reality slapped him hard. He never expected that he would find such a dramatic change. He guessed the ending but couldn't imagine the process at all. So firmly, resolutely, stabbed neatly into their chests with a sharp sword, without even frowning. Brothers that did not born in the same day, month and year, but die in the same month of the same year. Such determination to die really shocked Dongfang Xian. It's impossible, impossible. How could that be? At the same time, Dongfang Xian was incredibly jealous of Nangong Luyan, because he had such a group of brothers who trust him wholeheartedly and died fervently for him without even frowning. But what brother did he have? He was alone, not even a close friend. Ha 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 ha, ha 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 dash. Suddenly, Dongfang Xian stood up, looked up to the sky and laughed. So what even if Nangong Luyan have these brothers? Weren't they all dead now? Not only his brother died, but Nangong Luyan also died early. Do these people still expect that Nangong Luyan would revenge for them? It was pleasing that they still think like that. In this life, this was absolutely impossible to happen. Just when Dongfang Xian was elated, suddenly, a whistling sound came from afar. But in a blink of an eye, the two figures flashed like meteors and fell to the ground. These two people were not others. They were Su Luo and Nangong Luyan, whom Dongfang Xian thought were dead. Su Luo looked at the scene in front of her, and she was so shocked that she almost forgot to breathe, and then boundless anger rushed up. Chapter 1840, Thunderous Battle 1. Luo Luo. As soon as Ziyan saw Su Luo, whose eyes were misty with tears, she immediately shouted like a drowning man who saw a driftwood. It's important to save people. Su Luo didn't have time to say more. She quickly took out the life-saving pill given by her master, and put it into the three people's mouths. Later, Su Luo held the sword in Bai Chenying's heart with both hands. Ziyan looked at her in tears. The cold sword was pulled out, blood was gushing. Is this really okay? Ziyan was worried and anxious. Her eyes were nervously staring at Su Luo. At this time, Su Luo had no time to explain anything to her, because every minute and every second were now crucial. Perhaps a delay of 1 second would cost a human life. Su Luo held the hilt of the sword and pulled it out inch by inch. Su Luo's hand held the handle of the sword, and pulled out the sword body inch by inch. The speed was not fast, but it was stable and there was no tremor. As the cold sword was pulled out, Su Luo had already cut her wrist with a dagger before the blood gushed out. A bright red blood spilled on the wound. The blood that had not flowed out of Bai Chenying was immediately suppressed. The big wound was healing at a rate visible to the naked eye. The wound on Su Luo's wrist naturally healed. Seeing this, Su Luo couldn't help but sighed. Fortunately, at that time she went to Xianwood residence to obtain the scarlet blood Ningpo figwort, and got the blood of this body. Otherwise, today she may not be able to save Bai Chenying. How is it? Can he be saved? Bai Chenhe. She was concerned and confused, and Ziyan, who had always been calm, seemed to be out of her wits. Su Luo's hand was on Bai Chenying's body. Every time, there was a trace of invisible current. Ziyan felt dazzled. Her vision was blurred for a while. Soon, Su Luo stopped her fast hand. There were more than 200 acupoints, and more than 1,000 ashi points in the human body. Within a few seconds Su Luo was done. How fast was her speed? This was no longer be able to write with ink. I have a pulse. Su Luo stood up and gave Bai Chenying to Ziyan. Her task was not light, because there were 2 lives waiting to be saved. Anya Ming and Lan Xian were her friends. She liked these youngsters, and she didn't want Nangong Luyan to regret in the future. Before she could think much about it, Su Luo had already undertaken the task. It was a blood treatment, and its electric current flowing through more than 1,000 acupoints. Although it was only a few seconds, it was just because the speed was too fast, so Su Luo's spirit power was consumed too quickly. Anya Ming's injury was quickly dealt with. Like Bai Chenying, Anya Ming also regained his breath. At this time, there was only Lan Xian left. But now Su Luo was obviously a little bit slower. At this time, her smooth forehead was covered with a fine layer of sweat, which condensed into beads and rolled down. Her face, pale and bloodless, was obviously overwhelmed. It was not so easy to snatch life from the hand of God of Death. let alone Su Luo, who had snatched 2 lives in a row. Luo. Ziyan was in difficulty. While worrying about Su Luo, she was also worried about Lan Xian. That scene just now brought her incomparable shock. She was deeply realized of the true meaning of the words, brothers live and die together. Don't worry, I'm fine. Su Luo nodded to Ziyan, and then went to rescue Lan Xian wholeheartedly. Because of the long delay, Lan Xian was the most difficult to treat of the 3. When Su Luo came into contact with Lan Xian's body, the soul in his body had escaped disorderly. Chapter 1841. Thunderous Battle 2. However, Su Luo used her hands to forcibly change something rotten into something magical, and put the escaping soul back to the original place. But the price was heavy. Su Luo was spitting out a mouthful of blood. Luo. Ziyan was anxious. Su Luo waved her hand to indicate that she was fine, and then concentrate her attention completely on opening up the acupoints in Lan Xian's body. Because previously, Lan Xian was already dead, his whole body's acupoints and meridians were all closed, so she had to open them one by one. Originally, it was possible for Nangong Luyan to do this, but now Nangong Luyan couldn't do it, because now he was fighting with Dongfang Xian. In Lan Xian's body, there was only around 100 acupoints that had been opened. Just at this time, suddenly, there was a strong wind attacking the back of Su Luo's head. It was incredibly fast. Su Luo could have avoided it, but she must not avoided it, because if she avoided it, the strong wind would take a solid hit on Lan Xian's body. A life that was snatched with great difficulty from the hand of God of Death would immediately fly away, scatter, and die. Even if Su Luo's master was able to come, there was nothing that could be done. So not only Su Luo could not avoided it, she had to block it in front of Lan Xian. Bang! There was a violent sound. Su Luo's body, which was protected by space gravity, suddenly swayed, and spitting out 3 mouthfuls of blood in a row. At this time, the person who caused this had stopped. This was a middle-aged man. At this time, his cold eyes was staring at Su Luo, which was giving people a feeling of arrogance. Father. A surprised voice came from behind. This was Li Yaoyao's voice. So, that was Li Yaoyao's father, the current master of the Jade Lake Palace, the Li family? Su Luo tried to hold back the pain in her chest, and her hands were still steadily connected to the other acupoints on Lan Xian's body. After that, she handed Lan Xian over to Ziyan. Then, Su Luo slowly stood up, and looked at the head of Li family coldly. Li Yaoyao's father, Su Luo had met before. At that time, Li Yaoyuan was one of the people who planned to rob her when he just came out of the Xianwood residence. Li Yaoyuan stared at Su Luo. Li Yaoyuan was surprised that the girl could withstand the move he was most proud of. Su Luo knew that with her strength, if she fight alone with Li Yaoyuan, the chance of winning was too low. Then only by disturbing his mind and influencing their emotions could she have a chance to win. At this point, Su Luo's mouth was slightly hooked. The smile on her face was as gorgeous as summer flowers. The master of Li family is very interesting. Su Luo smiled faintly. Li Yaoyuan frowned. His felt that Su Luo indirectly implied something from what she said. Father, don't talk to her, she's always scheming something. I don't know what kind of damnable plan she has. Li Yaoyao urged loudly. It had to be said that the person who knew you best was not your friend, but your enemy. Li Yaoyao was actually right. But obviously, Li Yaoyuan didn't know Su Luo that well. Before he made a move, Su Luo's voice was heard from afar. The Jade Lake Li family's descendants has already died or broken. Li Yaoyao, do you still have the mood to sow dissension here? The 4 words died or broken descendants was too wounding, even more for a super influential family like them. Li Yaoyuan's face suddenly changed. When Dongfang Xian came out, he said Li Yaochen was fine. Li Yaochen did not die. Chapter 1842. Thunderous Battle 3. What do you mean? Make it clear. Li Yaoyuan's hands were like an eagle. He tried to grab Su Luo ruthlessly. But could Su Luo be caught by him so quickly? Her figure flashed quickly to dodge. Li Yaochen died. He was personally killed by Dongfang Xian himself. We all see it with our own eyes. Su Luo was lying without batting an eye. Not far away, Dongfang Xian was fully absorbed in fighting with Nangong Luyan in midair. What did you mean Li Aochen was killed by him personally? That was absolute nonsense. Dongfang Xian wanted to refute, but in this moment, Nangong Liuyun's attack suddenly intensified, like a raging wind and a heavy rain. Dongfang Xian did not even dare to say a word. So, how could he dare to be distracted and refute? You see, Dongfang Xian didn't even refute, he has already acquiesced. Su Luo pointed at Dongfang Xian in midair with a smile. Now, she would let Dongfang Xian have a taste of what even 100 mouths wouldn't be able to absolve one's guilt. Li Yaoyuan suddenly moved. Nonsense! How can he harm Li Aochen with the relationship between first senior brother and the Jade Lakely family? Su Luo, why do you have to sow dissension? Who will believe you? When Li Yaoyao saw Li Yaoyuan stopped, she was anxious. What she was most afraid of was if Su Luo were to tell the story of the beggar. Su Luo naturally knew that Li Yaoyuan was not so easy to convince, so she added oil and vinegar. We found a lot of source stones in the roaming dragon's secret territory. Li Aochen's plot of land was especially lucky. There were at least hundreds of purple crystals. Do you think Dongfang Xian would not be jealous? Dongfang Xian was neither good nor virtuous man. It would be strange if he didn't get jealous. Li Yaoyuan's heart was increased from 1 point to 3. Dongfang Xian in midair was half dead. However, he could not refute a word. Li Aochen, is he really dead? Li Yaoyuan stared unwaveringly at Su Luo. He's really dead. There is no corpse. The corpse turned into ashes. Su Luo said with a smile. Although she didn't see it with her own eyes, Nangong Luyan already told her. Li Aotian is also dead, isn't he? Li Yaoyuan's face became more malevolent. Back then, Li Aotian disappeared on that island. The Jade Lakely family had been looking for him for several years, but not a hair was found, let alone a person. Yes, Li Aotian is dead, but I killed him. What I did will not be falsely accused to others. Su Luo simply admitted. The effect she wanted was to disturb Li Yaoyuan's mind. Looking at the trembling master of Li family, Su Luo knew that her plan was half completed. As for Li Aoqiong after the last incident, it seemed inhumane, wasn't it? Su Luo shook her finger with a grin. Speaking of it, can it be that it might be inherited in your Jade Lakely family? Li Yaoxiong also has this problem. How could Li Yaoyuan respond to such a great insult? Loathsome girl, accept death. Li Yaoyuan shouted. Li Yaoyuan's heart was in disorder. There was an endless stream of anger. It had to be said that he was already at a disadvantage. Su Luo sneered at the corner of her mouth. The master of Jade Lakely family was now in the commander rank. Although she was somewhat inferior in strength, it was not impossible to fight against him. This battle, Su Luo wanted to fight it herself without hesitation. Yun Luo Red Lotus came up to see the excitement, but was pushed back by Su Luo. This was her own fight. She didn't want to use the hand of others. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.